Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Mitch Taco Bell. I am your host tonight for Taco's Tall Tales, and I got to tell you that I'm very excited tonight. You see, before there was a thing called the internet or Google or any way to search whatever you wanted that came up on your brain housing group, we heard stories and we heard tall tales about this incredible aviator who flew a C-130, KC-130F, one of our Marine birds, onto the deck of an aircraft carrier. And I always thought it was kind of, no way that ever happened. But tonight, we're going to debunk all that, and we're going to find out and meet the man that actually did this. It's going to be an incredible night. I've got also with me my former sergeant, Alan Stinar, who is the head of the Battleherk Project. And if you guys have not seen the Battleherk Project, please go to that. This young Marine has basically become the SME for everything C-130. I mean, he could probably dwell down to how many pieces of wood tongue depressors are in the first aid kit on the bulkhead, 245 bulkhead. But without further ado, I have Admiral James Flatley, upper half, who is in Charleston, South Carolina, and Alan Steiner with us tonight. Alan, Admiral, how are you guys? Welcome aboard.
Doing good.
Alan, can I borrow some of that beard from my head?
I actually cut this down. You should have told me something about that, sir. I could have sent it to you.
All right.
Hey, sir, like I was saying in the introduction, we never were able to pull up photographs of your accomplishments landing Look-Ma No Hook. And it wasn't only until probably 10 years ago that I actually saw the photograph, that became popular, able to search, and saw the photograph of the C-130 landing on the USS Forrestal. So I thought tonight maybe you could reach back in time and tell us a little bit how you got the assignment, a little bit about your background, how you got that assignment when you were at Pax River, and then we can get into how you prepped for it and the whole 9 yards. Go ahead, sir.
All right. We're talking 57 years ago. I was a young test pilot school graduate, bottom of my class, just like the Naval Academy. But all us fighter pilots came from there. Not a problem.
Not a problem. Anchor guys.
But despite my class standing, I got my choice of test divisions, and I wanted carrier suitability at flight test. And I'd come off 3 deployments on Intrepid, flying the F-11 Tiger and the F-8 Crusader.
Oh, wow.
And I was a landing signal officer. I did that I went back to sea after test pilot school and was a CAG LSO. So I was always around the flight deck. And so carrier suitability was the place to go. And I had a few previous friends who were already there and wise and wizardly in the ways of carrier suitability. And so I checked in, and I had a couple minor projects. They kept me busy, and I made the coffee. And one day, a tasking came down from CNO's office. Vice Admiral Jimmy Thatch was head of Naval Aviation, part of the Navy at that point in time, and he and my dad developed all the fighter tactics in the Pacific in World War II. That's and right. my dad named the Thatch Wave. They had competing solutions to beating the Japanese Zero, and Dad finally gave in and named Thatch's idea the Thatch Wave, and people are still using it and talking about it these days. But
right.
So here I was, a new guy, carrier suitability, and down comes this project, C-130. Let's see if it'll land on the carrier. And
but you had never flown multi-engine airplanes before, had you?
No, I was a fighter pilot through and through. I got a little prep time in the T-28 in test pilot school, and I'd flown the SNJ in flight training. Those were my only prop experiences. All single engine up to this point. And so the project officer looked around the room and said, "Who wants this one?" And nobody answered. Finally, somebody popped up and said, "Give it to Flatley. It's never going to happen." So I took it on, and I wasn't sure it was going to happen either. But on 4 October of '63, I went down to Lockheed, and Ted Limmer was the C-130 and C-141 project test pilot for Lockheed, and he gave myself and Smoke Stovall, my co-pilot. Smoke was a lieutenant commander and also a fighter pilot. Neither of us had any multi-engine time. And but he had a project of his own, but he said, "I'll go along with you," which was nice of him. So down we went. We got Ted Limmer took us up and gave us a one-hop checkout, and we took the airplane back to Patuxent River. Second hop, and they wanted to put a new nose wheel orifice in it. They wanted to take off the refueling pods. That refueling tank in the fuselage was preordained. That was solution in our progress through our 21 landings to go from 80,000 up to max gross 120,000 on the ship. That means we could bring a payload aboard of about 30,000. That's what it was all about. We were in between the C-1, the little old ASW airplane that could carry 20 bags of mail or 8 people. And Grumman was almost through the development of the C-2. And but it wasn't ready to go to the fleet. We had a blank spot for getting stuff aboard the ship. And so this was a probable solution. So 4 October, back to Patuxent, modified the airplane a tiny bit. Nothing you could talk about, Alan, the same airplane. And we started touch and goes out on the dry runway. You know, your life is in the hands of the flight engineers up at Patuxent River. They're all incredible people. So they did it. It was dry one way for 3 weeks of touch and goes. And I think I squeezed in about 15 hops in the airplane on the dry field. And
see, that's amazing. That is amazing to me, sir. I mean, to think that you had one hop in the Herc and they gave you the keys and said, "See ya." And I think about how many hours of training that we require before they'll sign you off and let you have the bird.
Yeah, we despite what my dad done for aviation safety by starting the safety center in '53 and getting the whole NATOPS and standardization thing going, when I got to Patuxent River in '62, I walked in the door at test pilot school, and they gave us 9 aircraft procedures manuals, and it said, "Come back in 10 days. I want you to fly all 10 of those airplanes." So we weren't doing it very smartly at that point in time, but thank goodness not too many accidents occurred. But so we were still in that mode when it came to the C-130. So no big. That's such a beautiful airplane. It flies so nicely. But Smoke and I weren't flying the airplane. John Brennan, the flight engineer, was.
Was he talking you through everything? Did they do what the engineers would do to us, smack you in the back of the head if you were landing in a crab?
Well, I don't remember those slaps, but I'm sure I deserved a couple.
All right,
so we started the dry field landings. The engineers were looking at it every way from Sunday and watching the rollouts and the approach speeds and the sink rates and the glide slope. And what we found out right away was that we could fly the same glide slope everybody else flies on the carrier.
Right.
It just worked out perfectly. So that took one factor out of the equation. And one of the problems was, and Alan, this kind of falls in your bailiwick, you know, that airplane at that point in time didn't have an angle of attack. So the flight engineers tried to find some place on that bulbous nose where a pitot tube could be put to make the angle of attack work accurately. We never gained confidence in that. The solution was, I use the kitchen clock as an example. We found an airspeed indicator that, you know, it's about this big, and the knots on there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not a problem. But we ended up, our approach was at 3 knots above stall.
Oh, wow.
So that's, and the airplane flew beautifully there. I was just as comfortable as I could be. And the reaction to get out of a sink rate or something was, it's just a beautiful airplane. It still is. Must be better with those crazy propellers they have on them these days.
On the J's. So you marked out the field at Pax River to practice your dry field landings. Who went out to the carrier and supervised removing all the cables, resting gear, painting the line down the deck?
Well, the flight engineers were the advanced party, and they did that for us. And the idea of getting the cables off the deck is so we wouldn't be cutting the wires, because we were standing on the brakes when we hit down in the landing area, both of us, in addition to the reverse thrust. But and the Navy wasn't going to let us go any way but axial. We used the whole carrier to do that, even though my first couple touch and goes were off the angle deck. And when the results were all in, no problem just working off the angle, coming and going. But,
really? So you could, all right, now somebody had told me that you all had disconnected the squat switch so that you could go into reverse while you're in the air.
Oh, yeah, that's part of the approach technique. You want me to talk about that now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So we quickly came to the conclusion that we weren't going to do it without reverse thrust. So 3 knots above stall, down the glide slope, landing signal officer, the old prop cut that the prop, World War II movies cut. So we got that. We were still 30 feet in the air and half the airplane off the angle deck, and we'd get the cut there, full reverse, and it was still a power on approach, but full reverse when the time was right. Landing signal officers are important, and I'd say out of the 50 landings, 29 touch and goes and 21 full stops, we never landed much further forward of the angle of the ramp than maybe 120 feet. And the number 1 wire was further than that up the deck.
Good God. So it's 132-foot wingspan. So how far was the tip of the right wing to the conning tower?
We stayed right in the middle of the extra wide white line all the way to the bow. We had
about 15 feet, I think it was.
15 feet, plenty of room. And the first day we went out there, we made 4 trips to the ship to get the whole project done and get to max gross weight. We could only have the ship an hour at a time because we're using up the air wings' valuable training time. So on there and out of there as quick as we could get our business done. But that first day we went out, I never got in the airplane and Patuxent, flew down about 2.5 hours down to where the ship was off the East Coast, and 50 to 70 knot gusts, and
Wow.
white caps. And a carrier deck goes like this.
Right.
Like this. Goes like this. So you're always correcting and three different ups and downs and sideways. So we got out there, and there are about 30 feet of deck movement. So it took me 42 passes to get 19 touch and goes that day. I was getting kind of tired. And the first 7 or 8 of those were on the angle deck, and so they were confident that I knew what I was doing. And then they said, "Okay, axial deck," and the next 12 or 13 landings were axial. The way we were going to make our full stop landings.
Right.
So flight engineers got a lot of data out of those 42 passes, and I got a lot of exercise and a lot of ball time. And
right.
I in my 1,600 carrier landings, I probably didn't work a deck like that ever after. The deck was really moving that day. But what people don't appreciate, that big long aircraft carrier, I don't care what the sea state is, every every minute and 29 seconds or something, that deck steadies out.
Sure.
For a moment. So we're trying to time our approaches to.
So when you first started the touch and goes, how much gas did you take out with you? I know you said you had the center tank in the fuselage, but how much gas did you take out there with you?
I think we were just full internal. Nothing was in that tank. And
when you were out there and did the full stops, did they plug in and into the RGR and refuel you that way?
That's the next 3 trips out there. After two or three landings at each weight, they pump it up another notch till we got from 80 to 120.
So your final deal was to take off at 120 and land at 120, or?
Yeah, we did that. So, well, that was the proof of the pudding. We wanted to bring some supplies and engines or whatever you might want to bring aboard. So we had to demonstrate we could bring that 30,000 payload aboard.
Oh my gosh.
Jeez.
So they never took you up on it. They never did it, even though it was a proven concept, right?
Yeah, and that was the C-130 community wanted nothing to do with it. And
yeah,
I can't imagine why.
And I wasn't going to do that for the rest of my career. I got back in my F4, but and everybody knew the C2 was almost to the fleet. So
right. Well,
sir, do you remember?
C2 is gone, and the Osprey has taken over that.
Oh yeah, well, that's huge.
Job. Yeah.
He's got a great range to be able to use that.
Yeah.
So that C-130, I looked through my logbook, and I never flew that C-130, so I'm not sure how I missed it in the squadron. Because Alan, do you know, was it at 252?
The story that I was told, it was at 252 during the time, and then that was taken up to the Naval Test Center at Pax River. I actually have the story from a retired Master Gunnery Sergeant Red Doctor, where you and some other officer came to Cherry Point and to talk about using the airplane, and he was, how would I put it, a little less polite than average to an officer about trying to take his aircraft and landed on a C-130.
Or landed on a carrier. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I remember
but there was the promise that if anything happened, Lockheed was going to refurbish the aircraft. And he said that he had commented, well, you're going to have to refurbish it when you pick it off the goddamn ocean.
Yeah. Well,
that's his words.
Well, I had to take it down to Norfolk one day so they could figure out where would they swing the I-beam through it so they could lift it off the carrier when, if it couldn't, they weren't going to push it in the water, but the carrier had to come back into port. How would you get it off? And they were going to shove an I-beam right through a certain part of the fuselage and lift it off that way.
Jeez.
Oh, no.
So I elected I made sure they didn't have to do that.
Hey, Alan.
I was wondering if there was somebody that was like, okay, just hear me out here. Why don't we make a smaller airplane? Just a thought. I know it costs a lot of money for a new program, new aircraft, but maybe that would be cheaper than using C-130s to land on aircraft carriers, because everything had to come off the deck. Everything had to be stowed underneath. And
there are a couple other birds around, like the 123 and a couple other things, but they weren't. They couldn't.
I don't know about 123, 2 engines.
Well, not many people appreciate this, but at the time they kept the fact that we'd accomplished this quiet for a year after we had done it.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Well, for the reason we were doing it on the West Coast, the spy planes, C2, what was our really wide wing spy plane was out on the West Coast.
Oh, the U2, right.
Doing the same thing on a carrier, and
they landed a U2 spy plane on a carrier.
Oh yeah, very successfully. And
can you imagine that? It's only got what, 2 wheels, and they're in line.
Yeah,
you have to use the pogo. You have to really run out and grab it by the wing to put the pogos in it.
Quite a project, and if that was going to become part of an operational thing, then they had to get engines to it, and keep it supplied to keep the project going. So,
well, that actually makes sense. They could put one of those, take the wings off, stick it downstairs, and then bring it up on top deck and launch it if they needed it.
I don't think I've ever been beside one, so I can't even talk about it. So.
Yeah, God. Alan, was the C-130 he used, was that the one that Dan had the raft pop out of the wing when they were flying cross country?
No, that was a T model.
Oh, was that a T model? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That bird ended up out on the West Coast, in the latter part of Vietnam. I got stories about it every once in a while. It flew crooked or something. I never believed that.
I'll see if I can actually pull it up right here. Let's see.
Alan, is it located down at the Naval Museum in Pensacola?
It's still there. It needs a fresh coat of paint. It'd be nice if the museum would actually go out there and take care of it. I got to go give her a pat on the nose about 3 years ago.
There's a bunch of big birds out there that they want to refurbish, but they need a place to put them, keep them precious after they do it. So they'll build another wing to that beautiful museum someday, and they'll all get tucked away inside. I'd like to be there for the dedication, but if they don't get going, that may not happen.
So you ended up getting a Distinguished Flying Cross from that episode.
Well, a year later, Jimmy Thatch, who I was talking about, signed that for me, but I was always disappointed. My whole crew, I ended up Smoke Stovall and John Brennan, the flight engineer, and another. When John couldn't be there, one of our flight tests, Al Seavey used to be there, and he detached before the year was up. So they gave Smoke and John both air medals, and I was disappointed. I was embarrassed by that, but young lieutenant can't do much for himself.
Right.
And then Al Seavey didn't even get the air medal because he wasn't there. They didn't even know about him. So I talked to CNO's office about 12, 13 years later, and CNO went up with me to Cincinnati, and we gave Al his air medal, long retired. So that was a nice gesture.
So was the flight engineer from Lockheed, or was he a Navy?
Oh, he was a VR1. Alan was at VR1 at PAX for a little while. They used to do the Antarctic stuff.
Right.
They took care of the airplane while I was there at Patuxent. They had some of their own for other reasons.
So what was the hairiest moment that you remember? I mean, did you ever have any nightmares about? Did you have a bolter have to go around or anything? The guy wave you off, and you're kind of going, I don't want to be a ramp strike here with this bird.
No, it was a beautiful airplane. Nope, it was a piece of cake. By the time we went to I went out the ship with 26 hours in type, and crawled out of the airplane for the last time with 49 hours in type. So my C-130 life was short-lived.
That's one of the things that astounds me the most is that, there are crew chiefs and flight engineers who have more time flying a C-130, holding the yoke, than you did at the time you did those tests, and you described it as, you put, a piece of cake. That's a real testament for how good of a pilot you were to be able to pull something like that off, and it was relatively easy. Although I'm pretty sure that, as you said, when you're standing on the brakes, I wonder if anybody checked those seats to see if there was any, bites from your butt cheeks clamping on them so hard.
Oh,
to stand on the brakes and do that?
Yeah, Alan.
What I didn't mention, reverse thrust. We both stood on the brakes, and the other little trick there was, as we hit the deck, I turned the yoke over to my co-pilot to keep the wings level so I could go down the nose wheel steering with my hands on the throttles.
Right.
To keep it on center line. So the same thing on takeoff. He'd fly the wings till we were ready to pull the nose up, and I'd let go of the nose wheel steering to make sure we were straight.
So how fast were you guys? The ship was going on top of, because that was a steam powered ship.
Well,
that was nuclear at the time.
Yeah, they all were up at that point. Well, you want 30 knots over the deck, whatever you're trying to come aboard in. That's just standard operating practice. And they try and keep it a little bit down the angle if they can. So that first day out there, they were backing the ship down to try and get it below 40 knots over the deck. That was another factor. So, the next time we went out there to normal conditions, some of the aerodynamics were a little bit different. We didn't have all that wind in our face. But it worked out beautifully. And each time we went back, I said I went out with 26 hours. We went back, it took about 8 days before we went out again, and then about 15 days before we went out 2 days in a row. But Smoke and I were out there doing FCLPs every day we were home. So I don't know how many of those I had. But.
So did you get a chance to, because I saw the group photo of you guys on the ship. Did you guys, when they were refueling, did you get a chance to go down, relax, get some chow, or?
No, we just got out of the cockpit, shook hands, and got back in and get out of the way for the air wing. So.
Well, who painted Look Ma?
We did get a photo op with all the heavies. So.
And who painted Look Ma No Hook?
I'm not sure whose idea that. I never did. Never bother asking, but it was a nice touch.
That's the perfect name for it. I mean, even in my database,
my buddy flight test did that.
Yeah, in my database, all the nicknames for the aircraft that have come out over the years for 798, it says "Look Ma, No Hook."
Yeah,
it's Bob. Amazing. Just like Bob, that's right. Or Boo.
Yeah, Boo, Bob.
Yeah, Boo's down the street from me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Boo is a trainer now.
Oh, really? Over there at NADEP?
Yep. Well, over at the FRD here at Cherry Point, it's a fuselage trainer.
Oh, okay.
And they converted Boo to a J model fuselage trainer.
Oh.
Imagine the stories that'll come out of those schoolhouse, out of that schoolhouse.
Oh my God.
Well, we're a family of naval aviators. My dad was a World War II hero, and so he was my hero, and I wanted to do that. And as I was most of the way along my career, my two oldest sons one became an F-14 pilot, another an F-18 pilot, and the F-18 guy is an American Czech pilot now out of Miami. And a son-in-law came around and got in the F-18 as well. And he just, he's now the admiral in charge of the the Air Warfare Development Center at Fallon, Nevada. So he's got Top Gun and some other units like that under his wing. Looking forward to him moving on.
So you have a son who's a Czech airman down in Miami?
Yeah.
What is it? What aircraft is he on?
What is it? 319, 320? Is that right? Sound right?
Oh, he speaks French.
Oh, well, I don't know. I don't have to worry about the computer screwing him up. Well, he does, but you can't go fly with him as a Czech unless you start out your first 2 legs manually.
Right.
You make sure you can fly the airplane.
So let's do a shout out to your sons. Name of your boys again?
Well, Seamus Flatley was fighter pilot, F-14s his whole career, and Joe Flatley, the American airline guy, F-18s his whole career.
Amazing.
Toured fighter out at Top Gun as an adversary pilot in the F-5.
Rich Brophy.
And Rich Brophy is F-18s all the way.
Uh-huh.
He's just checked out at Luke Air Force Base in the F-35. The Navy wanted an Admiral F-35 pilot to talk on the Hill, so
nice.
He'll be the guy.
Sir, I've got a question from Buddy Smith, who's the old commanding officer of VMGR 234 down the street where Alan and I were. It says, can Jim explain at what point he would actually bring the throttles into reverse range during each landing? I read that the ground squat switch had to be removed so the props could go into beta range before touchdown. Is that true?
All that's true, but I got all the way through that without ever knowing you could not do that in every C-130. So, but lucky to help flight test adjust the throttles, and I went into full reverse when the landing signal officer told me to, and it was somewhere slightly off the back end of the ship and probably 20 to 30 feet in the air. So, and we needed to touch down as near the back end of the ship as we could, and we did. And in fact, Smoke Stovall made the last 3 or 4 landings, and his rear wheels actually touched the forward end of the round down. So that's about as close as you can come to the back of the ship.
So 20 feet in the air, you would go into reverse?
Yeah. Full reverse at 3 knots above stall, but it was a power on approach up to that point.
Right.
And took us right to where the flight engineers figured that out on the dry field. So,
wow.
So we went with their recommendations, and we learned a little bit that first day out there, and all those touch and goes. We never reversed the engines that day after those 1942 passes, but
well, it seemed like right above the deck. I mean, touchdown and then go back into full reverse. We would do all of our short field landings, and pretty good job on. I mean, it does a great job on short field landings. I mean, I remember when they were going to get the Iranian hostages, the plan was to land a C-130 in the soccer field and do a JATO out.
Right.
So I know it can do it. Just depends on how much weight.
Normally, in your own operations, you were on deck before you went full reverse, or? Yeah,
we were on deck. You had to be on deck.
But you went in reverse before you landed, like he did.
Oh, no.
Yeah, normally, sir, in order to be in max reverse, your wheels have to be touching the ground for the weight on wheel switch to engage. Whereas they disabled it for your missions.
Yeah.
Which is anybody who hears that from our community, it's gonna blow their mind that you are already in max reverse in flight before even landing.
Well, we had all that wind in our face, like you don't necessarily have on a dry field landing.
I mean, maybe that's why they picked you. You had 26 hours. You didn't know any better. Like, oh, I thought we could all do this.
Give it to the coffee guy.
You could have. But I think it was the right idea to pick two carrier pilots rather than
Oh,
teach
absolutely.
the C-130 guy how to deal with the carrier.
Did you ever have
learn how to deal with the airplane?
Did you ever refuel off of a C-130 out in Vietnam when you were flying F-4s?
Lots of times, yeah.
Did you have to do the toboggan method downhill?
No, we'd usually burn up. We needed to refuel, so we're pretty light, and it wasn't a problem staying steady at that airspeed.
Right, right. Yeah, because I just remember hearing stories about the F-4 at the angle falling out of the basket.
No, I never heard of that or witnessed that. We were careful though.
Right. How about Vietnam? What was the craziest thing that happened when you were flying F-4s on a mission in Vietnam?
Counting 23 SAMs one afternoon after flying a photo escort. We're ready for the strike group because it'd been bad weather for a long time. And strike group got in, surprised them. Here I come behind an RA-5C 5 minutes after. They were ready for us.
Right.
Counted 23 SAMs coming up the ground.
Oh my gosh.
Most of them weren't cracking. We fired them cold.
Oh, so
Trying
they
to outrun them too.
But
spray and pray.
well, you know, I'm so proud of my dad doing what he did. Not in, certainly World War II, but getting that safety center started and all the. My wife's brother was an air wing commander. He had over 1,000 traps, and so out of over 7,000 traps on carriers and all that time in that difficult landing environment, nobody in the family has blown a tire. So much less had an incident or an accident. So,
well, do you remember your dad's number, naval aviator number?
oh,
Because he had to be early days.
well, you'd be surprised. He was like in there 30, 31. Yeah, I had to go to sea for a year and a half in those days. But so it was 31, 32, and been going on since 1911. So
Yeah.
it was up in 1,000, 2,000s, I think.
Still, that's amazing. And how many hours did you end up retiring with in your military career? Do you know? Do you remember?
Just 4,700.
4,700 hours in military aircraft?
Yeah,
Wow.
that's not my hard charging buddies. Some got to 6,000. A lot of cross countries.
Well, I mean, as you went up in rank too, you also were tied down to a desk somewhere.
Amen. But I did get some A6 traps as a flag officer.
Really?
On my flagship. So,
and you were the captain of the Saratoga, right, sir?
right. I did 5 deployments on Saratoga, and I said, boy, he's the only guy I know how to take care of it. I was always a troubled aircraft carrier. It did a lot of great work for our Navy, despite its problems.
Right. I do.
I took my oldest, Seamus, on his midshipman cruise. He was in my back seat for my 1,500th landing when I was CO of the ship. So that worked out.
Oh, wow.
Nice. That's a memory.
Yep.
Well, sir, I tell you what, I really appreciate you coming out with us tonight because, as I mentioned at the beginning of the program, your stuff was lore. I mean, we heard about it, but there was no proof. And Alan, you had a question about the weight on the nose.
Yeah, somebody had mentioned wondering if they had offset the nose weight of the aircraft to compensate for the size of your brass balls sitting up there in the flight station.
That's what that refueling tank was for back there.
That's right. Because as Taco said, I've had tons of people tell me, as a historian, that never happened. And I'm like, I would tell them, here's the YouTube video. It did. Well, obviously it didn't work. No, it absolutely worked. They just decided maybe we'll get a smaller airplane. And they did eventually. It was successful. It's not feasible to continue doing it any longer.
We didn't have the big expensive decks we have today, and you could run a J out there and deposit a load and get out of the way very quickly, and not bother the air wing with all their airplanes parked on the flight deck. You could do it on the angle, come and go, and it's, they might have to do it someday. You never know, but we know it can be done, and even easier than it was in 1963.
Wow.
I'm not sure they would do it again if they had the chance, because there's no Marriott on a ship. And as Rich Driscoll said, that the KC-130 community can't go anywhere without an 8,000-foot runway and a Marriott.
Oh, come on, 8,000-foot runway, BS.
That's what he said.
I mean,
you're the one who said it. You're the one that told me about it.
Not me, man. I don't know how many nights I spent in the BOQs out there in lodges or in Rhoda. Yeah,
I think we need to pick on Rich because he said 8,000 feet. Jim Flatley says he could do it in under 300.
Yeah, what was the total length of the landing, sir?
The first landing was 295. Last landing was almost 500 feet.
And how much runway to take off?
Well, that was interesting. They restricted us from lifting the nose until we got by the island. They were worried about that 15 feet.
Right.
I literally could have been waving at the captain way up on his bridge when we went by if they'd let us rotate sooner. So.
And you, it's been a long time, 50-some years. Do you remember the flap settings or anything that you did? Did you practice different flap settings for takeoff?
Well, we definitely had the flaps down going. No, well, you're asking me two hard questions now, 57 years later. We're definitely flying flaps landing, and I think we had partial flaps for the takeoff.
Now, we had JATO bottles to assess. Did they have those back then? Did they even discuss that option?
No, the Blue Angels are using them all up. We didn't. You guys, did you play with them?
No, I was just wondering if maybe, for takeoff, if they had ever discussed, hey, we could cut the distance by another 100 feet if we use JATO takeoff.
No, but you didn't. You don't need to do that with the C-130.
That's true. Not on that.
And those bottles became so expensive. That's why we don't have them anymore.
That's right.
The Blues had to quit using. They ran out of. I was on the second. I went up in Pat Albert on its second to last JATO takeoff.
Oh wow!
At an air show down in Florida.
Yeah, I got to fly on the fourth to the last JATO shot, and what a remarkable ride that thing is when you attach those rockets to the back of that fat plane. It really starts to move when you have an extra 8,000 pounds of thrust.
That's right. I got
and you didn't even use it on the C-1 on the aircraft carrier.
No, we didn't. Maybe you can see this. Can you see that?
Oh, yes, sir.
Look at that.
Who's the aircraft commander on that one?
Not sure, but that was a young lady when I went flying that day.
Ah, all right.
And she did she tried to do a max stop landing and ended about 5 feet from the edge of the runway. So.
Oh.
Yeah, it should say the aircraft commander right on there, sir. Should be in the left hand.
I mean, aircraft commander may have been that young lady. Boy. HERR or KER. Can't read anything, any of these signatures.
No worries, boss. No worries, sir. Well, do you have any other good sea stories you want to pass on to our audience tonight?
Well, I was, whether it's luck or my dad praying for me, just never had any real close calls, except it's like on the highway, be defensive. So
Right.
a couple other folks came too close once or twice, just dogfighting and stuff like that.
Well, I've got, for Tall Tales, I've got an idea. I want to bring one of my Marines on from Oakland. I mean, we were in Cherry Point. We went out to Honolulu, and Mike Aldridge, I think he was a Lance Corporal at the time, and I got him in the back of the other F4D when we went up to do the missile test. So he's probably the only enlisted guy that's been Mach 1.3 and 53,000 feet, in the Marine Corps, I would imagine. But I'm definitely going to bring him on. I love the F4. That was a great airplane to fly as well.
The whole world was flying it.
Yeah,
3,000 hours in it. That's a
3,000 hours?
wonderful beast.
Oh, that's incredible, sir. Well, Admiral, I want to thank you again for shedding light on the actual true events of landing a giant KC-130 on the USS Forrestal in 1963. That was, we're celebrating that anniversary right now or just close to it, because it was October 30th of 63. You were out there probably when John F. Kennedy was shot.
Well, it was October 22nd, and we were taking off. Got the logbook right here. And we turned the radio on, flying back to PAX, and they announced that the president had just been shot. So October 22nd.
Wow.
Or November 22nd, excuse me. So that was a sad end to a nice event. So
Wow.
And we couldn't talk about it for a year. So.
Oh, really? Oh, man, you guys. How about on the ship? Did they keep people from taking photographs of you guys? And
no, I don't think so. But they must have told them don't do anything with them.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what, Admiral. When I come down to see Admiral Shakti, I would love to buy you an adult beverage sometime and shake your hand, sir.
My pleasure. It'd be my honor. Alan, come with him. I'll walk you around Yorktown.
I actually have a couple of good reasons to go to Charleston. I could definitely make that a trip.
All right.
We're going to do this, sir. We'll make it happen.
All right. Well, keep up the good work. I know people are enjoying your tall tales. Thanks for letting me be part of it.
You'll get people watching it now, but we'll have more people later on who pick it up and view it. So sometimes they take too long, and I apologize to my folks out there. But there's some interesting things that happen. You just want to hear some stories, and that was the whole purpose.
Amen.
Anyway. Hey, sir, you have a great night. God bless you, and give your wife a hug and tell her thanks for letting us borrow you this evening.
Well, thank you for having us.
You're welcome.
Enjoyed having you in our home.
Hey, let me see your wife. Say hello.
He's got his own flight engineer behind him.
No, that's household 6, man. That's stick back.
Mother of 6, grandmother of 22. So.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Still putting them in uniform. That's what it's all about. They've got 2 at the Naval Academy. They'll both be 4th generation naval aviators. Maybe
Outstanding.
There's in the Marine Corps. So
tell him to look me up when he's at the academy. When he's doing his check airman stuff. I'd love to meet your son.
All right.
All right, sir. You have a great night. I'm going to take you out here, and we'll see you soon, sir.
Save that hair for me, Alan.
Will do, sir.
Appreciate it.
All right, Admiral. Have a great night, sir. Hoorah.
Good night to you guys and the rest of your C-130 buds out there.
Outstanding. Thank you, sir.
If any of
hold on a second.
Bring
you back. Say that again.
Up there near Stewart in New York, near West Point, Rex Kitely's a proud young Marine doing a great job.
So Sergeant Rex, shout out to Rex. If you're listening to this young Marine, your grandfather is an incredible guy. you've got big footsteps to follow.
He'll do it. All right. Good night, you guys.
All right, sir. Take care. Hoorah.
My pleasure. Take care.
Alan, that was a blast, man. Thank you so much.
Right? Man, I just can't believe thinking that at some point I would actually be able to talk to him and hear a story from the person and not just watch it on a YouTube video or, vaguely hear about it, but to hear it from him.
I've seen it over the years. I've just seen it like pop up on Facebook or a YouTube thing. But to actually meet the guy that did it, to actually meet the aviator that did this, I thought it was all still myth and, that guy's long gone somewhere. But to actually meet the Admiral tonight was incredible. And now I'm stuck. I got to go make a trip out to Charleston and go have dinner. I'm sure we'll get some more tales.
Oh yeah, I'm not sure how far Charleston is from here, but I mean it's just South Carolina, so it's not that far.
No, it's got to be about maybe 5 hours.
Girlfriend's telling me 4 or 5 hours. Yeah, so not that bad.
5 hours from Cheerless Pit.
Right.
I got to on an airplane, fly out there. I just was in Norfolk yesterday, so that was kind of fun. Got to fly over my old neighborhood as we climbed out. Looked down at my quarters that I grew up in Little Creek Amphibious Base.
Okay.
But, yeah, it was Sean Mick. I will meet you in Charleston. You know what? I tell you what. If I get a weekend out there, I get a trip, I'm going to put it out there and see how many young Marines can make it out, and we'll go meet the Admiral and buy him a beer or two.
Right. Well, I'm always down for, as I've said it before, I'm always down for cool shit.
Yeah.
Hate to use kind of a cuss word on this live feed, but that's exactly what I say is you just give me something fun to do, whether it's helping Jake Cobb with the tanker Lincoln at the Raider Mobile.
Right.
Did the filming for that or MCATA. I'm down for a great epic time, especially when you get to hear from the older veterans. You know me, that's exactly where I want to be, is hearing those old stories so I can pass them down to the next generation.
I didn't even think about it. We need to get Rich Driscoll. Get Rich hooked up with the Admiral and bring the Admiral out as and his wife as guest of honor for one of our MCATA events.
What a coincidence, because next year the MCATA reunion will be in Fredericksburg, Virginia.
Ooh.
Not that far.
Well, if young Rich Driscoll is here on the feed, or if he's listening, know that the Admiral is an outstanding guy and a great speaker and would have some awesome stories to tell. Because I really think that a lot of people still think it's a myth.
I'm telling you, if we do that, if we made that happen, we need to go get a medical C-130 transport, go pick up Red Doc from California. He's very, very old. I think he's 90. I think he's 98 this year. And pick him up. That way those two can meet up again. Because that was 798 was his assigned airplane at the time. Was
it really? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
8 years old? We can make that happen.
He's at least over 95. I think he's 98 by now. He's not had great health, but the World War II, Korea, Vietnam, the stories he has is impressive.
I bet. Well, Alan, I've kept you on the line here almost an hour, and I want to thank everybody, Jacob and Dilbert, Sean, everyone that Parker, I know you're on there somewhere. You guys watching, thanks so much for joining us tonight, Tall Tales. Next week is the Marine Corps birthday, November 10th. It happens to fall on Tuesday, does it not?
It does, as a matter of fact.
Yes, and I want to throw out there, I have two special guests. One of them has stars. One of them has
if it's Mattis, I'm going to drive out to your house and I'm going to kick your butt and steal your cool German, British, whatever that thing is, vehicle.
Now, actually, I sent an email to the Commandant and said, hey, sir, do you mind coming on Tall Tales? And he said, what time? So,
all right.
At the Commandant, but I'm looking at Bob Mojueski, Medal of Honor recipient, Marine. So, have him on, talk about some of his stuff.
Nice.
So, it'll be a celebration Marine Corps birthday. Well, listen, Alan, you have a good one. Be safe, brother, and I will definitely catch up with you soon. All right.
Roger that. Take care, sir.
You bet. Hoorah! Out here.
Bye.
Hey, folks. Thanks so much for joining us. Look forward to having you with us next week on Tuesday. Right now, I've got the day off, so everything's looking good on Tuesday. Tall Tales with Taco. We'll see you then. Hoorah.